It is coming Saturday, March 1st, Elimination Chamber in Toronto at Rogers Centre. Our next guest is going to face his former best friend, now turned huge rival, Kevin Owens. He is Sami Zayn. Sami, man, how we feeling?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad.
Nice.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you know what? I feel like you need a friend. A lot of your friends over the years, it feels like you can't trust them. They're turning on you. You turn your back, and they're sticking a knife in you. For you and Kevin, you've been doing this for so long now. It's over 20 years. Has anybody got a running total or a rough idea how many times you guys have done this?
No, I don't know, and I'm scared to even guess because I feel like you talk to these old time wrestlers sometimes, and they overshoot these numbers just huge because they just think they've been in the business so long and they've done it so many times, and they misjudge by like thousands.
Yeah.
So like I could easily say, oh yeah, me and Kevin, we've been in the ring together thousands of times, but I don't know, you might add it up and it'll be like 800. I don't know, so it's a lot. Any way you cut it, it's a lot because I actually said this on TV the other night, and I really do think it's true. I don't think there's two guys in the history of the business whose names are as inextricably linked throughout the entirety of their careers like this. Because when we were starting in Quebec, it was like me and him. And then when we were breaking out on the independents in the States, we were always kind of like, oh, the Canadian guys and us, and then even in WWE, it's like our stories just followed us all the way through. And that's maybe one thing for like, certain guys might have joined up at a certain point in their careers, but us, it's really from beginning to end. So I don't know. I think it's really unique. And the thing that I think is even more unique, and I was really taken by it this past week on Raw, when we got the match made, is how excited fans are to still see it.
Yeah.
And that's like, I guess let me toot our own horns here for a minute, but I take a lot of pride in that this is a match that people have seen countless times or some iteration of it countless times over the last 20 years. And even after all this time, people are still excited to see it. I take a great deal of pride in that. I think that's cool.
Well, and it was what I was going to talk to you about. We'll get to it kind of as we set up the match in a little bit, but I agree with you 100%. I think that's not always the case, and we will get into that. Now, I did
it's hard. That's not easy.
It's not easy because you know what? Everybody hates everything nowadays. We get tired of things so fast, and we move on. You two guys, you have something special, and like I say, we will get into it. But I did kind of go through, and now last man over the years for you and KO. No disqualification, last man standing, ladder matches, money in the bank, steel cage, anything goes, street fights, fatal four-ways. Is this your first non-sanctioned fight?
No, it's actually not. We did one 15 years ago. That was kind of our first really high-profile, I don't even know what you want to say. Like, we did something which I think for the time was really different and ahead of its time. On the independents, we did a storyline. We were a tag team for several years in Ring of Honor. And then he turned on me and we built a story over a year, which back then on the independents, like the independents was not really a place for long form storytelling. It was really a lot more dream matches and that sort of thing. And there was a lot of great talent out there that you currently see on your TV on WWE. That were around at that time. So there was no shortage of talent. And I think that was very much the spirit of those times. Like there were storylines that kind of got these matches made, but they were very, very thin. They were more about the matches at that time on the independents.
Yeah.
So to do something that was a long form story with twists and turns and supporting characters and all that, it was pretty different for the time, but that year-long story culminated in an unsanctioned match.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy. And look, I mean, I thought that was huge at the time. It was like, the Hammerstein, no, it wasn't the Hammerstein, excuse me, the Manhattan Center in New York City. And it was Ring of Honor, and it was a really big deal. And now to think that 15 years later, full circle, and it's in the Sky Dome, or at least, the Rogers Center, but it'll always be the Sky Dome to me. That's crazy. It's really crazy when you stop and think about it. If you're just kind of watching it as it goes, it's not that crazy. You're like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Canada and these two guys and whatever. But if you really stop and think about it, zoom out and look at the whole picture, it is crazy that we're here.
You know, I didn't have it in my, but I kind of, like you say, back then it was about the high profile names and the match. It wasn't about storylines, and just the way wrestling and, sports entertainment, if you want to call it that, has evolved. Fans now know, they kind of know how the sausage is made a little bit, right? We're kind of back behind the curtain a little bit. And I think there's still a lot of old school guys that don't like it, but I think it's made it more enjoyable now. I don't know if it's harder for you guys or easier or what, because now the storylines, everybody's into them more. They need to be so much more deep and rich, and there's callbacks, and that's a throwback to this and that. To me, it's made it way more exciting, the storytelling angle of it. And I think that pulls in more fans now.
So I think so for a couple of reasons, because it is pro wrestling. Great. I love it. Always have, always will. But it's also a television show, right? So there's kind of like sectors of fans, in my opinion, where there's going to be the wrestling fans that just love wrestling and are going to watch it anyway. Now, those fans, you want to respect them. And I think you want to reward them for giving you their attention over the years. And so I think, especially creatively over the last couple of years in WWE, I think it's been far more rewarding for the fans who pay attention and go like, oh, you see, and it ties together just like any TV show. Yeah. But for some reason, we almost like shielded ourselves with the bubble of pro wrestling and did things that other TV shows would never do. Yeah. Like just dismiss history altogether and start anew every now and again, rather than looking at it as one really long, interwoven kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think actually we're just kind of presenting it more like any television show in some respect.
Yeah.
So I think if you're a television viewer who turns on this program, which is a wrestling program, but also a TV show, you'll be engaged in the same way that you'll be engaged by any TV show, because there's interesting characters, interesting stories that are coherent, and you can follow them. And if you're a diehard wrestling fan, it's like, you're picking up on the smaller nuanced things. And to me, like, not to sound too artsy fartsy here, but for me, what I love to create should satisfy everybody in a way. Like, it should appeal to people who've never watched a wrestling match in their life, can turn on the TV and within a few minutes be engrossed by it and kind of figure out what they're watching. The same way, if you're a 35-year fan and you turn it on, like you followed every detail, yeah, it should be just as satisfying across the board. A very hard thing to do, to be both like broad and nuanced at the same time. But to me, that's the genius of it. If you really want to create at a high level, to me, that's the sweet spot.
I agree with you.
Like, I'm a big Beatles fan. They're maybe my favorite band of all time. And I think, like, there's songwriters and musicians that still look at their work all these years later and revere it and study it and whatever, and pick apart all these little details. But then, like, you could also show Yellow Submarine to a 7-year-old kid and they're going to love it. So it's like, it's broad, but it's technical. It's everything. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's what I shoot for. And I think WWE as a product has gotten much better at that in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I think guys for years have kind of talked about how it's an art. And I think now more than ever, you're able to appreciate the art that it is with the storytelling and how everything kind of plays together. And I mean, this is where I started blowing smoke. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and we talk about sports all the time. And you just strike me as an ultimate team player for the WWE. It's okay. And it's not a disrespect. It's, in case of emergency, break glass. Like, well, we need a banger. We need somebody that can get into a storyline and it's going to deliver and it's going to be convincing and we're going to feel it as fans. And then the match is going to deliver. We need somebody to go with Johnny Knoxville into WrestleMania and make that work. That's Sami Zayn. I mean, I don't know. Do the powers that be hear a no from Sami Zayn very often?
I don't think they hear no, but they hear ideas. That's for sure. They hear a lot of them. And I think I've been pretty fortunate over the years to have a pretty decent success rate to where it's given me a certain amount of equity with them that my ideas will be heard. And again, I'll also give a little bit of credit to the sort of change in creative and the creative shift over the years last couple of years under Triple H, but even a little bit prior to that, just with my relationship and the creative team, to where just my voice feels heard. And, they're not going to do everything I suggest, but, they don't look at it like, God, these wrestlers giving us these ideas. And some wrestlers might give bad ideas. I hope I'm not throwing anything bad out there. So I'll throw a lot out there, and I really appreciate having a voice that's heard and like being met, or if an idea doesn't work, they kind of explain why, and hey, we want to do this idea instead or whatever, and you just go with it. And but even that is even that's sort of like a privilege that's earned over time, because they don't write everybody into stories all the time. And I feel like over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been consistently written into into a story at all times. Yeah. And then it's incumbent on me, like you said, to just make it work. So that, I don't know, that's not lost on me, but I don't know. I'm happy with it. And of course, like any player, you want to be the best on the team. You know what I mean? But it's different because real sports and what we do is like, what we do is so unique. It's strange because in real sports, like, this is a Flames podcast, right? So like if Huberdeau puts up 100 points, that's it. He's the best player on the team. Case closed. You know what I mean? But that's not how it works for us.
There's more to it than that.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it. It's not just like proven results, because even results are like subjective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just such a unique little thing. But I personally take a lot of pride in versatility. I think that's another thing that when I was talking earlier about what I like to create and how, it kind of gives a little bit to everybody. That's one part of my philosophy. Another part of it is I've always admired the wrestlers that were good at everything, that could talk, that could do comedy, that could do hard hitting action, that could do high flying, that can kind of blend everything together. To me, that's the craft. And those were the wrestlers who I used as a blueprint, and I followed in their footsteps when I was starting out. The idea of the guys who started in like Stampede and then eventually went to like Europe and Japan and Mexico and then the States, and then they ended up in WWE. But that was the template to learn your craft before you got to the big show where you really were there to retire, put in a couple of years, make some money and retire. Things have changed a little bit in that respect nowadays, but that was always the template for me, is like learn every aspect of the craft so that you're good at all of it. So that, and it kind of worked, because like you said, now if you throw me in one situation or another in WWE, I'll do my best to make it work. And, more often than not, it works.
Well, absolutely. There is that versatility and that the acceptability from fans, which I want to talk about, but you go, 1 year you're winning the tag titles. You're ending a historic run of the Usos and winning the tag straps. And then you're ending another Intercontinental run and going there, or the work in the Bloodline. It's been top floor stuff the entire way. And without your ability, like you say, to walk it, to talk it, to pull it off, not many guys can do that. And you're one of those guys. And I just marvel in your ability on top of all of that. No one takes an ass kicking like Sami Zayn. I mean, nobody does it better. And there's the flip side, because a lot of guys can get their ass beat, but you still have to feel like, as a fan, there's a chance. There's a chance this guy might come up from the ashes. There might be an exploder coming here right quick, and then our guys got a chance. I like we said earlier, I think people get fatigued with stuff. It would be enough of this guy, but with you suck people in. There's a real appetite for Sami to pull this off, and a belief that it's not over yet. We haven't seen the 3 count yet. Sami's going to find a way to get this done. You mesh it all together so well. Is there anybody that you kind of emulate that way in the turning the tables? Might pull this upset off here, because you do it so well.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Firstly, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know who I would compare that to, because what you're kind of describing in some ways is like a 101,
it is
baby face for an insider term here, but like any kind of good guy or in any kind of dramatic story, even if we're talking about like a Hollywood movie that's just fluff. Like,
but there have been guys over the years, and I don't need to necessarily name names, but it's like, well, he's going to come back and he's going to put on a charge here, but I'm not really buying it.
Well, this is what I'm saying, right? Like, so the template is 101 is what I'm getting at.
Sure.
The template of like, here's a good guy, or here's the guy I'm supposed to get behind. Here's him in trouble, and here's him getting out of trouble.
Yeah.
Now that's a template for any Hollywood movie you've seen. It's a template for virtually any wrestling match you've seen. It's a basic template for any kind of dramatic story we're trying to tell, with a protagonist like that, a conventional protagonist. But what separates a great Hollywood movie from like a bad Hollywood movie? It's just execution, and that's a harder thing to articulate. Like, why don't I buy this? That's a really hard thing to sometimes articulate, because like, even when you talk about taking an ass kicking, it's like, and I wonder this to myself, like, okay, I'm getting beaten up and they care about me, but then sometimes someone else will get beat up and it's exactly the same, but they don't care in the same way.
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference? And even I'll ponder that to this day. Like, what's the difference? Is it, it's, and sometimes it's it's such subtle mannerisms, or it's like an indefinable, I don't know. It's like, what's the difference between good acting and bad acting? I don't,
You've captured it truly.
It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it's a very hard thing to articulate. It's a feel thing. It's a qualitative sort of thing. It's not something you can really quantify or just put into words and go, well, it's this. No, it's just like an air. It's a vibe. I don't know. It's just how you interact with it. It's very, very hard to put into words.
And this is from a million miles away, but it feels like that's the harder thing to accomplish.
Of course.
To use not say there's being a heel and being a bad guy and doing the villain stuff, but to legitimately keep the fans on your side and invested and feeling the ass whipping that you're going through and then waiting for you to come back through. That's the harder of the two to me.
So I've always preferred being a good guy. I actually really enjoyed being a bad guy too. I guess I just like wrestling. I don't know. Yeah. But I think I love the art of being a good guy because it is very challenging. Because like, if I told you, hey, walk into a room full of people and within 10 minutes, I want everyone in that room to like you. Now that's a lot harder to do than if I tell you, hey, walk into a room and within 10 minutes, I want everyone here to dislike you.
Yeah. It's
really easy to get disliked. You know what I mean? Really easy. You walk into a room, you go, what is that you're wearing? And you're stupid. And you're just loud and brash. And within seconds, people will dislike you. It's easy to get people to dislike you. It's much harder to go and win people over. And I just like, even, I don't know if you're getting this from me here from this conversation, but like, I'm a sucker for the craft and the challenge and the art of it. And like the difficulty of it, like it should be difficult. It is difficult. And you want to rise to that occasion and rise to that challenge. You know what I mean? It's like,
I do. Yeah, no, I do. And it's not it's not a very good comparable, but when we heard we might be able to get you, I wanted to go back and watch some of the stuff. And I just immediately, it was going back to Elimination Chamber 2023, you versus Roman in Montreal. And I just remember with my kid that night, and you talk about, we now see behind the curtain is Roman's had this thing for a couple of years. He's probably not losing in an Elimination Chamber, but it is in Montreal and it's Sami and there's the bloodline thing that we'll see how it goes. And I mean, you didn't need to win anybody over that night. It was fish in a barrel for you that night. And on the flip side, he played it so well as the villain. I love that match. I mean, I went back and watched it. It still kills me to watch that because it was so beautifully done. You come out second, like the champ comes out first, and then the 4-minute pause before anything happens, just because the crowd is so invested. And then out of nowhere, the exploder, and it was awesome. And I remember sitting there afterwards, me and my kid, he's a big fan, and we're just kind of, we're just gutted. I mean, I'm an old guy, Sami, and I know how the sausage is made, like I say, and I'm like, I'm gutted that Sami Zayn didn't pull it off. And we watched the press conference afterwards, and to see the legitimate pain that you were feeling right in front of the fans in Montreal, that was an amazing night. I don't know if if it's even worth going back to.
No, of course.
That was one of the best performances for me, good versus evil, where you just felt it as a fan.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier here, but you know what I was saying about somebody who's been watching the whole time versus somebody who's just turning it on the first time. They should kind of get it either way. And, you know, like you said, the work going into that match had already been done. I walked into that building. I didn't need to win those people over. We already had them.
Yeah.
And they were already against Roman. But still, you have to construct it in a way that will get like as if somebody didn't know the story. Somebody just turned on the TV and they're like, oh my God. So you want to construct the match or whatever it is, you know, you want to take them on a ride. And even for you who's been watching forever and you're smart to the business and all this stuff, you know, you just want to get people wrapped up in the ride. That's what we do. That's what's beautiful about it. And the times in my life as a fan where I was just completely in love with wrestling and addicted and like just, you know, it's because I was taken on that ride. The greatest matches and the greatest stories just took me on that ride. You know, and I think of Brett and Sean and Brett and Steve Austin, especially as a kid where I was old enough to know what wrestling was. But I loved Brett and the feelings I felt were real, even though I knew this isn't, you know, real per se. The feelings were like, they were stronger than me. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
No matter how I could logically tell myself not to feel the way I'm feeling, the actions just took over and created a feeling that was like kind of almost illogical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And those names you're trotting out, those are some Hall of Fame names.
Those are the best. Honestly, those are the best to do it.
You're in that class where you can make people feel like that, I'm going to suspend the disbelief in what I really know, but for the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to believe that this is going to be a thing. And what's crazy about that match, I mean, Roman's well into his reign. He doesn't need any help at that point. But it was another one of those, how's this bastard who's going to ever beat? Because his cousins are coming in. You got to beat the two refs are knocked out. This guy's never good. It was as though you're helping him build his rep up instead of maybe the other way around.
No, it's obviously both. Like, look, there's no question working with Roman for a year and working with the Bloodline did wonders for me. That's not even a question.
Yeah.
But I think, and I think Roman, I actually heard him say something like this in an interview. Any good relationship or any good match, storyline, whatever you want to call anything, everybody, the tide should rise across the board.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if I was able to add to an already amazing thing that Roman was doing, and I think I did.
You did.
That's great. And there's no question he did a lot to help my kind of my stock and all that stuff. And again, that's one of the things that I take pride in when we're talking about the craft and all this like artsy fartsy stuff is like checking those boxes, you know, and doing those things. We're like, not only are we doing this, we're also doing that.
Yeah.
And we're also boosting value in this. And we're also helping his title reign. And he's helping me. Like just everybody's winning. And fans are getting this great thing in the process. And just to touch on one quick thing you said, but when it's done really well, you're not even consciously putting away your suspension of disbelief. It just goes.
Yeah.
You're not like, let me watch and pretend I don't know. You just watch the way you're watching a movie and you just forget.
Yeah.
There's no conscious decision to forget. It should take over. And that was one of the beautiful things about that Montreal match is, you know, especially when I see the faces in the crowd and all that kind of thing. Like the emotions that they're feeling are so real.
Yeah.
Everyone in that building knows what this is. And everyone in that building can maybe go like, well, WrestleMania is a month away, whatever, you know, like nobody's thinking that. They're all just emotion takes over.
Yeah.
And that's when this thing is at its best. So for sure, that's one of my proudest stories, proudest matches, greatest nights for sure. Like it was just great, you know? Well, I don't know. It's more a testament to everything that I think is great about the business. And we managed to kind of like encapsulate it, you know?
And it's another thing that's happened where, you'll have a faction or whatever you want to call them, a group in wrestling. And then somebody they want to be part of that group. And we've seen it recently. It happens a lot, and it doesn't always take. It was just tremendous. There was no reason why it should work. And I don't want you to talk about stuff you've talked about a million years.
No, but it just goes back to what I was saying. Like, it's just the execution, and it's hard to articulate why it's different.
Yeah.
And look, it's the same reason, like, you're married.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you're in a marriage. Well, there's millions of people that are married, billions of people that are married. But your marriage is special because it's between you and your wife and two very distinct personalities that creates a distinct relationship. So that's why every person's unique, every relationship's unique. And it's the same thing with this thing. It's just a bunch of people coming together. Yeah. Sure, we've seen it before. But when you take this person's background, that person's background, and it's a recipe. And that recipe just happened to create the right cake.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, everything goes up and down, and wrestling's at such a high point right now. But when it started to break down, you had to watch it. You couldn't miss an episode. You had to go back and make sure you caught it. Because what did they do this week? Is it funny? Is it heartbreak? Well, what is it?
Right.
The chair shot on Roman with KO on the ropes. That's like a seminal moment. I feel like that's when you think of the last 10 years of wrestling, the things that you see. I mean, you'll see WrestleMania where Roman loses the belt and different things, but that chair shot, it stands alone in a way, because you weren't turning on him. You were he was turning on you, even though you laid the chair shot. It was poetic.
It was really cool, man. Like I said, I've said this in other interviews, but there's people who've had Hall of Fame careers, who've won the world title 5-10 times over. And very few of them ever get to tell a story like that. So I feel very lucky to have been a part of it, or to do a story, just a one night kind of culmination of a story like that. And I really wonder, like, if you didn't know it, like, my wife never saw Dumb and Dumber when I met her.
Okay.
And then I told her, you got to watch it. It's the funniest movie of all time.
Yeah.
And then she watched it and she was like, huh, really?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's like, just, you had to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a product of that time and that place and the age you were when you watched it and whatever else. Like, some of these things don't necessarily hold up the same when you take them out of the time and place in which they existed.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how it'll hold up, or, in 5-10 years or whatever.
Well, you know what? I'll date myself a little bit. It was very similar in a way when Andre comes out on Piper's Pit and challenges Hogan to the match at WrestleMania and rips the shirt. When Roman is ripping the shirt off of you, I'm having those same vibes.
Yeah. I mean, it felt like, I don't think about these things when we're doing them. I don't think about, fans will remember this in 5 years. I just want to make it as good as it is in the moment, because really, like, I know now with like wrestling and content and everything is like legacy and posterity, and you watch stuff back 20 years later, but really this is a live, in my opinion, this is a live art. It's live. It's one take. It's about here and now. You know what I mean? That's why wrestling's getting these big TV rights, because it's one of the few things that, like, it's like sports, like hockey, right? You got to watch it now. You don't want to, you could watch like a classic game, the Canada-Soviet game or whatever from the 70s. And yeah, it's a great game, but it's about watching it now. It's a happening. It's in the moment. And that's what makes wrestling great, is for that moment in time, nothing else exists. You're just locked into whatever's happening in that moment.
Yeah.
So it definitely felt great at the moment. And the fact that we're still talking about it now, a couple of years later, is great. But I think when you approach anything about making it the best it could be in that moment, the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah. What's the career highlight for you? I mean, there's Montreal, but you didn't win. You've beaten KO at pay-per-views. You end Gunther's run. You're part of the tag. And I saw some people, there was somebody that said you and Kevin winning the tag titles was one of the most satisfying victories that they'd maybe ever seen, whether tag or not, that you guys were able to end that run. And for the two of you guys, what would be, if you were to pick one moment that stands out?
I can't pick one. Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned about, you know, 5, and even then to have 5 just like available to you like that, that's a, you know, that's a privilege, and that's a pretty good career. So yeah, I've been lucky. I've had a really good career with a lot of great moments, and some of them date back like 15 years. There's a lot I've been very proud of. I don't know. It depends, because there's kind of all these different categories, you know, there's matches, there's stories, there's promos, there's like, I don't know, very hard to just pick one, but
Yeah.
definitely
Well,
the stuff with the bloodline and the stuff with Kevin at Mania, that's some of the, you know, it's hard to top a lot of that.
it might, I hope it might still be coming, because we saw Cody finish his story, and that took a while.
Yeah.
You've done just about everything, and if you talk about the art, the underdog story, there might not be one better than Sami Zayn reaching the top of the mountain. How can you let that into your headspace? Because you get disappointed, or where is that on your radar?
I mean, you know, I try not to live and die by these things. Of course, it would be great to win the world title. And I've even said this on TV as like in character. It would be great to win it, but I can't live and die by that.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I had a great career, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, Punk, that almost became a famous thing about how he had this unbelievable career, but he never main evented Mania, and it just like gnawed at him, you know? So I don't want to have that thing be my main event of Mania. Like,
Yeah.
oh, but I never got this one thing. Like, who cares? If I want it, I do want it, obviously. And I'm here for the long haul, and that's always what I'm working towards. But you also got to be able to look at it, and if the career ended tomorrow, you're like, I don't know, man, pretty good run, you know, and just take it for what it is. But for sure, I aspire for it. I want it. I want to get there. But I also don't want to put myself in a position where I live and die by it, and feel like any part of my career was any less if it never happens. You know what I mean?
And you're too much of a purist. You're a fan at heart in the first place to, I think, allow that to happen. That's just the nice guy Canadian in you, that you can't focus. And you're of course going to take a lot of satisfaction in what you've accomplished. But
I just think you're kind of missing the point if that's all it's about. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, take a great hockey player. Again, there's a hockey show. So, you know, I don't know who, like a Joe Thornton or something like that. Like, that's a first ballot Hall of Famer. No question about it. But, you know, and this is different because it's real sports. But then there's like, oh, well, he never won a cup. You know what I mean? But like, is that really everything?
Yeah.
Is it? I don't think it is. I think the guy made an unbelievable living playing the game he loved as a kid for the entirety of his, you know, adult life. I think that's pretty great. You know what I mean? Like, you just need some perspective.
Yeah.
And sometimes we lack that when we look very tunnel vision and like the sport and the prize and the you know, these markers that define who's a success and who's not. Like, you know, I don't know, to get this far is already a huge win.
Heck of a run. Yeah.
So you just, I don't know. I try to maintain that perspective, and I don't want to come off like, oh, he doesn't care, or he doesn't care about the world title, this and that. Of course I do, but I just need, like, you know, perspective for day to day for me as a person when I wake up. And I'm just happy to be alive and happy to be doing what I'm doing, and to have done it well for all these years. I need to like put that at the front so that I don't ever become one of those people that's like, oh, but I never, if only, you know.
It's a tough way to go through life. You're only going to be.
Yeah, you're just setting yourself up for, and you know, those goalposts always move.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, that's a dangerous game to play.
It is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
you know, let me get, because we'll kind of start to steer this home. We'll set up the match in a moment, but with you and Kevin, and we kind of started there. For how long you've gone on your own trails, and they always seem to kind of come back, whether you guys are getting along or not getting along. Here we are now, but again, I feel like the world can be jaded, in the online world, and our appetite it changes a lot, and our attention span is so short. I think there'd be a lot of cases where two guys could be going at it again, and okay, been there, done that would maybe be the sentiment. And yet with you two, I feel like there's more anticipation now for Elimination Chamber coming up. than there's ever been. We don't know what's going to happen. We have a feeling it's going to be brutal. It's going to be an ass kicking for probably both guys. But
yeah,
I think it's very rare for the same two characters or people to engage in something like you guys have and still somehow be building the anticipation.
I agree. And I don't know if there was a precedent as well. Like, I don't know if there's anything to compare it to just by sheer time, like amount of time. Like, I don't know. So Cena Orton, that was a great match, and they did it a million times, and it was always great, even till the very last one. And were there pockets of people who were like, this one again? Maybe. But by and large, those houses were full, and arenas full of people came to see that match between these two mega stars. But I don't necessarily know that they ran it back as many times as we did, or for the amount of time in totality as we did.
Yeah.
So I don't really know that there's a precedent from guys who are like, oh, this is a big match, a big money drawing match 15 years ago. And then 15 years later, oh man, here's this big money drawing match. I'm sure there are. I just can't really think of it off the top of my head. But I do feel like that's one of the ways where this thing with Kevin and I, that's where it gets to be a little unprecedented.
Yeah.
And shocking to me, mind you, as well. Like, even after this promo I did, or whatever it was last week with Adam Pearce, where we got the match made, and people are chanting like, let them fight. And they want to see it. And, I need this match, and he doesn't want to give it to me, but we get it. And everyone's happy. And they're like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this match. I don't know, man.
It's working.
I came to the back, and I was like, wow, imagine that.
Yeah. And maybe
I want to see it. This is great.
And but it can't just be because everyone knows, they were buddies and friends growing up and all that sort of thing. There's something beyond that.
There's a lot to it. One is, I think we've also we have a proven track record to where we'll deliver. But now you also add these variables, like it's an unsanctioned match. It's in Canada. It's at the Skydome, the Rogers Center.
Yeah.
And now the story going into it is different from the story and going into the last time we wrestled each other. So there's all these variables that go into it. It's not an accident, though. It's not like some freak occurrence. A lot of work goes into making sure it doesn't get stale.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very again, I don't want to come off boastful here, but I take a lot of pride in the fact that people are excited for this match. And even me, I can't speak for Kevin, but I'm really excited for it. Really excited for it.
Yeah. And
even that's crazy for me to say after wrestling Kevin maybe 1,000 times, or maybe 5,000 if I'm going by the old timer,
right?
The old timer scale. However number of times we've been in the ring together, that I'm still excited for a big match coming up with them. That's kind of crazy.
And then it's because as we sit and we get ready for it as fans, it's Canadian soil, and you guys have done this, but we know you guys are going to try and elevate again. I see online there has to be blood. Now that there's blood, we got to have some blood. And I don't know how that makes you guys feel when you hear that kind of stuff. But do you feel pressure there? Because yes, people are excited, but there's now that expectancy to deliver upon.
I'm not that worried about it. Yeah. I'm not. No. Sometimes you can't really control. Well, in a dream world, look, theoretically, when you get people excited for a match or to pay to see a match of yours, when you get excited, you want them to have some sort of expectations, right? That's where the excitement comes in.
Yeah.
Now, if those people's expectations are through the roof or expecting a certain level of, I don't know what, violence or whatever, I'm not really worried about that. Because again, I go back to the track record. It'll be good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you don't see a chainsaw in the match, you're like, man, I really thought they were going to bust out a chainsaw. That's not my problem.
It's like Gordon Ramsay. Dinner's going to be good. You'll enjoy dinner.
It's going to be good. Yes, it'll be good. It'll be good. I promise you that.
I want to set up the match, but the last thing, this is a fan question. It's the haluva kick. I don't know how you do it. Because you're running at full speed and the foot comes up and it looks bang on every time. Has anyone ever said, I'm not, by the way, I'm not taking your haluva kick? This is,
No, I've had people kind of be nervous about it.
yeah.
Like, what do I do? You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
or
Because they can't really move
like,
to more than
yeah, I mean, it's kind of
put a
hard
lot
to
of faith in
explain.
you.
Like it really is just a kick to the face. Like I don't really know how. There's just a way to do it to where you're not going to injure somebody.
Yeah.
But it is ultimately
Just
a running kick to the face. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's obviously like some craftsmanship or whatever you want to call it
Yeah.
that goes into it, but it is what it is. Yeah, it's kind of what you see is what you get with that one.
Yeah. It's well, you've mastered it. And I would think probably along the way over the years, maybe there's some nights it didn't come off quite the way it was supposed to.
Well, a handful of people have been smoked over the years,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, nothing too serious. No.
Yeah. Wee Man took a good one. Wee Man took
Yeah,
a
there's a great picture actually, like a freeze frame picture of the contact, and like his nose is just completely smushed. It didn't catch him in the side of the face or
yeah.
nothing. It's just like straight on.
Did
His
he know it
nose.
was coming at that point?
Well, I don't think he might have known exactly when it was coming because maybe he would have turned his head or something like
Right.
that. But
Yeah.
yeah, he
Well, he
had to
sold
know
it.
was coming. Yeah,
He
yeah.
sold it well.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
took it. Well, he took it. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, let's set up this match. You said it on Raw that this time you and Kevin, you've had your differences, but this time was different. The package pile driver, which by the way, I know you've over the years you've taken it, but was this your first 40-year-old Sami Zayn taking a package?
Yeah, different ball game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was about ending your
felt things in my spine that I'd never felt taking that move. And I used to take that move a lot in my early 20s.
Yeah.
My entire 20s actually was just me taking that move pretty much.
Yeah.
Felt very different. Yeah, at 40, no question. No question.
There's something with Kevin Owens right now, and he is a guy, he's always on the edge with his temper and all of that. But to look to end your career that way as a friend, what do you think has gotten into Kevin Owens?
I try to see things from other people's point of view, and even like, on TV, I've been asked a lot about, or, that's been like a thing for my character over the last few months. Like starting with the Bloodline reunion, or even before that, like just being friends with Jay. And, not everybody was cool with Jay coming back after he left the Bloodline. And there was this whole thing about me being like forgiving, or I can't believe you would, it's like a naivete almost that people question. So I don't know, it kind of ties into all that in a way where I think it's just like, I can't believe you would do this for these people, but you wouldn't do this for me. I don't know. But, Kevin's always got his own, I don't know. He's got his own way of looking at things. So.
And you said it when he was at the end of the match against Cody Rhodes, when you were there clearly in defense of your friend. I don't know. Not that it matters now, because what's done has been done, but it's too bad he couldn't have seen things differently.
Well, I mean, now it's time for the fight. You know what I mean? I think the table's set. Now it's just time to, to no better place, no better time.
Yeah.
Toronto, Skydome. I got to stop calling it that.
That's all right. Yeah.
It's the Rogers Center. It's the Skydome. It's the same stadium we watched Raw on in 1999, and what a huge deal that was as a fan, as a kid. So now to be going back there, me and him, I don't know. It is special, and I'm looking forward to it. No question.
It's going to be a wild night for sure. And like they say, these two guys will never be the same again. I guess you have forgiven and forgotten with other people and with Kevin in the past. That a lot of fans wonder if maybe it's come too far. Has too much damage been done, do you think, to ever repair the friendship?
Look, I've said before no, and I've been wrong. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just being emotional and I'm saying like, no, this is it. This is it for real. And, maybe 3-4 years pass and you kind of start to overlook things. That's just kind of how life is, I feel. But I don't know. I don't want to say never. I've learned that by now, but I don't know. Right now we've got an issue and it's time to solve it.
It'll be solved maybe once and for all, or maybe not. Coming up March 1st at the Rogers Center in Toronto, the old Sky Dome. Kevin Owens against Sami Zayn at least one more time. We can't wait. Tickets available, ticketmaster.ca. Can't wait. Sami, thanks for doing this, man. It was a lot of time, but a thrill for me. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
You bet.
Appreciate the questions. Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.